The storm had rolled in over Evergreen Hills Cemetery, casting a heavy gloom over the rain-drenched headstones. The sky wept, its slow, relentless drops soaking deep into the earth. Yet nothing, not the freezing wind, not the thunder rumbling in the distance, could move the golden retriever curled up against a single grave. His fur, once bright and golden, was now dull, clumped together from the endless rain. His ribs faintly showed beneath his drenched coat, his breath slow, weak, but he never left. He never even lifted his head. For days the dog had remained there, as if rooted to the ground by grief itself. His dull eyes never strayed from the name carved into the headstone. Noah Carter, beloved son, a hero taken too soon. No one knew where he came from. No one knew his story, but everyone who passed by whispered about him. Some took pictures, others left food, but he never touched it. He was starving, yet he refused to eat. It was as if life no longer mattered, because his heart, his soul, had been buried beneath that stone. The cemetery's caretaker, an old man with decades of loss carved into his face, watched from a distance. He had seen grief before, but never like this. Never in the eyes of a dog. He sighed, wiping the rain from his jacket. Then, headlights cut through the mist, and a black SUV pulled up. The door swung open, and stepping out, towering and unmistakable, was Mike Tyson. The wind howled through Evergreen Hills Cemetery, rattling the brittle branches of the old oak trees. The rain had lessened to a soft drizzle, but the night air was still thick with an eerie chill. Mike Tyson stepped out of the SUV, his powerful frame barely flinching against the cold. His sharp eyes scanned the graveyard, locking onto the golden retriever lying motionless beside a single headstone. The dog hadn't moved, hadn't acknowledged the world around him. It was as if he no longer belonged to it. Mike took a slow step forward, his boots crunching against the wet gravel. The cemetery caretaker, a weary old man named Harvey, watched him closely. "That dog's been here for days," Harvey murmured, his voice nearly lost in the wind. Mike didn't respond right away. He was focused on the retriever, on the hollow look in its eyes, on the way it pressed itself against the cold stone as if trying to sink into the grave itself. Mike had seen fighters break in the ring, but this was a different kind of loss, a different kind of pain. "He's not just lost," Mike finally said, kneeling beside the dog. "He's given up." Harvey exhaled heavily. People stop by. They shake their heads, take their pictures, post them online. Some even leave food. He gestured toward the untouched pile of kibble that had turned soggy in the rain. "But it's like he don't even see it." Mike reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a strip of grilled steak, something he'd picked up on the way, thinking it might be enough to coax the retriever from his sorrow. He placed it down, right in front of the dog's nose. The scent of warm meat filled the air. But nothing. No movement, no reaction. Harvey sighed. "Told you. He don't care anymore." Mike clenched his jaw. He had felt loss before, the kind that swallows you whole. He knew what it meant to grieve so deeply you forgot how to exist. But this wasn't just grief. This was a dog who didn't understand why his world had fallen apart. "You know who's buried here?" Mike asked, his deep voice cutting through the cold night air. Harvey nodded. "Noah Carter, young soldier. Died overseas, only 24 inches. He gestured toward the inscription on the headstone. "Beloved son, a hero taken too soon." Mike's eyes flickered with something unreadable. He stared at the name for a long moment, then back at the dog. "What's his name?" "Buddy." Mike exhaled sharply. "So this is where he came back to—" Harvey nodded. "After the funeral, no one saw him for a while. Then, out of nowhere, he shows up here, and he ain't left since." Mike glanced down at Buddy, his body still curled against the grave, as if willing himself to sink beneath the earth. He wasn't just mourning, he was waiting. Waiting for someone who would never return. And that's when it hit Mike. Buddy wasn't just a stray. He had a home once, he had a person, he had a reason to live. But that reason had been buried 6 feet under, and now he was just waiting. Waiting for Noah to come back. Waiting for something that would never happen. The realization sent a chill down Mike's spine. He looked at Harvey, his expression grim. "Has anyone tried to take him in?" The old man hesitated. "Some folks called the shelter, but—" he shook his head. "Buddy runs off. always finds his way back here. Mike set his jaw. This wasn't just some viral story about a loyal dog refusing to leave his owner's grave. This was real grief, real loss. And Buddy? He was fading. He couldn't let that happen. Mike Tyson had stepped into rings, faced off against legends, taken hits that should have broken a man. But this was a fight against time, against heartbreak, against the kind of pain that steals the will to live. And he wasn't about to lose. What happened next would shock everyone. Do you believe in unbreakable loyalty? Comment. Loyalty if this story moved you. If you want to see what happens next, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because what Mike does next will leave you speechless. Like, if you want Buddy to get the help he needs. Comment your thoughts. Should Mike take Buddy in? What would you do? Share this story if you believe in second chances. Part 2 is coming soon, don't miss it. Mike Tyson remained crouched beside Buddy, the cold from the damp ground seeping through his jeans. The golden retriever hadn't moved, his breath shallow, his eyes empty. Mike had seen fighters knocked down, seen men pushed to their limits, but he had never seen a spirit this broken. Buddy wasn't just waiting, he was fading. Mike clenched his jaw, his gaze flicking toward the inscription on the headstone once more. Noah Carter, a young soldier gone too soon. And Buddy? He was the last piece of Noah that still remained. The air was thick with silence, the kind that pressed against the chest like a heavyweight. Harvey, the old caretaker, stood a few feet away, his hands buried deep in the pockets of his worn-out coat. He'd seen a lot in his years tending to the cemetery, but this was different. Mike finally broke the silence. I can't just leave him here. Harvey exhaled, shaking his head. Ain't that simple. Folks tried before. Animal control came by, but Buddy always ran. Even when they got him once, he found a way back. He doesn't want to be anywhere else. Mike frowned, because this is all he has left. Harvey nodded. Yeah, and I don't think he understands why his best friend ain't coming back. Mike let out a slow breath, running a hand over his shaved head. The thought of Buddy spending the rest of his days curled against this grave, starving, waiting for someone who would never return, made his chest tighten. Has anyone contacted his family? Mike asked. Harvey hesitated, then sighed. His mom, Sarah Carter, she's not in a good place, Mike. After Noah died, she lost everything. Her home, her stability. She had to move into some tiny apartment. She couldn't keep Buddy, so she took him to a shelter, hoping he'd find a good home. But I guess Buddy had other plans. Mike's fists clenched at the thought. A mother losing her son. A dog losing his entire world. And no one's told her that Buddy's been here? Harvey shrugged. Don't think anyone wanted to. She's barely left her apartment since the funeral. Folks say she's just existing. Mike's jaw tightened. He knew what it felt like to lose someone. He knew how grief could paralyze a person. How it could make the world feel like nothing but an endless, hollow place. But grief hadn't just stolen Sarah's son. It had stolen her will to live. And now, it was taking Buddy too. Mike looked down at the dog again, his mind racing. He'd come here thinking he'd find a stray in need of a home. Instead, he'd found a love so strong, so unbreakable, that even death hadn't severed it. But Buddy couldn't survive like this, and neither could Sarah. Mike Tyson had spent his life fighting battles inside the ring. But this was a battle against something even greater, and he wasn't about to walk away. The night had settled deep over Evergreen Hills Cemetery, wrapping the headstones in an eerie silence. The drizzle had stopped, leaving behind the scent of damp earth and fading rain. Mike Tyson stood motionless, staring down at the golden retriever who refused to move, his frail body pressed against the cold gravestone. The weight of the moment pressed against Mike's chest. He had spent years fighting battles, standing in the ring against some of the world's toughest opponents. But this was different. This was a battle against grief itself. Harvey, the cemetery caretaker, shifted on his feet, watching Mike closely. You really think you can help him? he asked. His voice was low, cautious, almost doubtful. Mike didn't answer right away. Instead, he knelt down beside Buddy, his massive hands resting on his knees. He saved him, didn't he? He finally asked. Harvey frowned. Who? Noah, Mike said, his gaze still on the dog. He must have saved him once. Otherwise, Buddy wouldn't be like this. Wouldn't be holding on this hard. Harvey sighed. Yeah, that's what I heard. Noah found Buddy when he was just a pup, abandoned under a bridge. Scrawny thing, half-starved. No one wanted him. But Noah took him home, raised him, trained him. Buddy wasn't just a pet. He was family. Mike let that sink in. A boy and his dog. Two souls that had saved each other. And when Noah got deployed, Harvey ran a tired hand over his face. Didn't have a choice but to leave Buddy behind with his mom. She did what she could, but after Noah, she just couldn't keep going. Had to give Buddy up. He shook his head. Guess Buddy never accepted that. Mike's jaw tightened. He looked at Buddy, his frail, rain-soaked body, his ribs barely hidden beneath his damp fur. He escaped. He ran. He found his way back here. Not by accident, by instinct. Mike stood up, his mind racing. Where's Sarah now? Harvey hesitated. She's in a small apartment on the other side of town. Barely leaves. Barely talks to anyone. People say she doesn't even turn on her lights at night. Mike exhaled slowly. He had seen loss break people before. But something about this, about a mother, a son, and a dog that refused to forget, hit him harder than he expected. He looked back at Buddy, still unmoving, still waiting. No one's told her he's here, what Mike asked? Harvey shook his head. Don't think anyone wanted to. Don't think she could handle it. Mike's fists clenched. That wasn't a choice anymore. Sarah had lost her son. Buddy had lost his world. But grief didn't get to win today. Mike turned, his decision already made. I need her address, he said. Harvey hesitated for only a second before nodding. And with that, Mike Tyson walked away. Not to leave, but to bring back the only person who could save Buddy from the ghost he was chasing. Mike Tyson gripped the steering wheel tightly as he pulled up to the rundown apartment complex on the outskirts of town. The street was quiet, dimly lit by flickering street lamps, the kind of place where time seemed to stand still, a place where grief had settled and refused to leave. He cut the engine and glanced to his right. Buddy was curled up on the passenger seat, barely moving. The retriever had finally allowed himself to rest, exhaustion weighing him down after days of waiting in the rain. But even now, his ears twitched at the slightest sound, as if still listening for a voice that would never call him again. Mike reached over, his massive hand resting gently on Buddy's head. We're gonna fix this, Bud, he murmured, then pushed the car door open and stepped into the cold night air. The building was old, bricks weathered from years of neglect. The steps creaked under his weight as he climbed them, his every movement deliberate, steady. This wasn't a fight he could win with fists. This was something deeper. He knocked twice. No answer. He waited, then knocked again, firmer this time. The door cracked open an inch, and a tired, pale face appeared in the dim light. Sarah Carter. She was thinner than in the photos Mike had seen. Hollow-eyed, shoulders slumped as if the weight of the world had pressed down on her and never lifted. She blinked up at him, confusion flickering across her face before realization struck. Mike Tyson? She whispered, voice raw, unused. Mike gave a small nod. Yeah, I hope I'm not disturbing you. Sarah shook her head, still in shock. What are you doing here? Mike hesitated, then stepped aside, revealing Buddy. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Sarah gasped. A sharp, broken sound. Buddy's ears perked, his head lifted. Recognition flashed in his tired eyes. And then, he lunged forward. Sarah barely had time to react before Buddy was on her, pressing his body against her legs, his tail wagging wildly, his entire frame trembling with relief. He let out a soft, broken whimper, the sound of a soul finally coming home. Sarah choked on a sob as she dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around him, her fingers gripping his damp fur as if afraid he'd disappear. Oh, Buddy, she whispered, her voice cracking. I thought I lost you forever. Mike stood back, watching in silence. He had seen powerful moments before. Knockouts, championship wins, moments of triumph. But this was something else. Buddy let out a deep sigh, pressing closer to Sarah, his body finally at peace for the first time in weeks. And just like that, the waiting was over. The moment was almost too much to take in. Sarah Carter clung to Buddy, her fingers tangled in his damp fur, as if afraid that if she let go, he might disappear again. Tears streamed down her face, silent but endless. She pressed her forehead against Buddy's, whispering something too soft for Mike Tyson to hear. But he didn't need to. He could feel it, the relief, the pain, the overwhelming flood of emotion crashing down all at once. Buddy, who had been lifeless for days, was now trembling, not from the cold, but from something deeper. His tail, once still, thumped weakly against the ground. His breath hitched. He let out another small, broken whimper, the kind of sound that could shatter even the hardest of hearts. Mike had seen thousands of reunions in his lifetime. Fighters hugging their teams after a hard-earned victory, families embracing after years apart, but nothing like this. Sarah finally pulled back slightly, her hands cupping Buddy's face, searching his eyes as if to make sure he was really there. Her lips quivered. How did you find him?" she choked out, her voice barely more than a whisper. Mike crouched beside them, his deep voice steady. "He found his way back to Noah." Sarah sucked in a sharp breath. "He's been at the cemetery," Mike continued, his tone gentle but firm, "for days. He never left Noah's grave. He wasn't just lost. He was waiting." Sarah's body trembled at his words. She looked down at Buddy, realization dawning in her grief-stricken eyes. He had never given up on Noah, not even when the world moved on, not even when she had lost everything. She covered her mouth, her breath shaky. "Oh, Buddy," she murmured, stroking his head. "I'm so sorry." Buddy leaned into her touch, pressing his weight against her as if he had been carrying the burden of waiting for too long. Mike exhaled, watching the scene unfold. But then, Sarah froze. The weight of reality crashed down on her. She swallowed hard, pulling away slightly. "I don't know if I can take care of him." Mike's brows furrowed. Sarah looked away, shame flashing across her face. "I don't even know if I can take care of myself." The air grew thick. Mike had seen this before. The helplessness, the doubt, the feeling that loss had taken everything and there was nothing left to hold on to. But he had also learned something. Grief was a battle, and Sarah wasn't fighting it alone anymore. He placed a firm but gentle hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to do it alone." She looked up at him, eyes red, lips trembling. "I know what loss does to people," he continued. "I know what it's like to feel like you can't move forward. But Buddy, he never stopped waiting for you. He still believes in you." Sarah let out a shaky breath, glancing down at Buddy, whose golden fur was still damp, but whose eyes were finally alive again. Mike's voice softened. "You lost your son, but Buddy is the last piece of him left, and he needs you." Silence hung between them, a crossroads, a choice. Sarah looked back at Buddy, the war raging behind her eyes. Could she do this? Could she allow herself to hold on to the one thing that still tied her to Noah? Then Buddy nuzzled closer. That was all it took. Sarah broke down, burying her face in his fur, holding on as if this time she wouldn't let go. Mike let out a quiet breath, his chest easing slightly. It wasn't just a reunion. It was a beginning. But what happened next? That would change everything. If you believe in second chances, comment. Hope below. What would you do in Sarah's place? Share your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe for the next part of this incredible story, because this is far from over. Sarah sat on the floor, her arms wrapped tightly around Buddy, as if afraid he might vanish if she let go. His golden fur was still damp, but his body had stopped trembling. He was home. But Sarah? She looked lost, torn between the relief of having him back and the crushing weight of reality pressing down on her. Mike Tyson watched her closely. He could see the war in her eyes, the battle between wanting to hold on to the last piece of her son and the fear that she wasn't strong enough to do it. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Mike crouched beside her, his massive frame somehow gentle in the small space. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. She let out a shaky breath, running her fingers through Buddy's fur. After Noah died, I lost everything. My home, my job, my purpose. I barely get out of bed most days. She swallowed hard, then looked up at Mike, eyes filled with guilt. What kind of life can I even give him? Mike studied her for a moment before answering. He had been here before. Different circumstances, same darkness. You think he cares about all that? He asked, nodding toward Buddy. You think he needs anything other than you? Sarah glanced down at Buddy, who gazed up at her with unwavering devotion. He didn't stay at that grave because he needed a house or a big backyard, Mike continued. He stayed because he needed his family. And that's you. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. I just don't know if I can do it alone. Mike leaned back on his heels. Who said you have to? Sarah hesitated. I don't have anyone, Mike. Mike's jaw tightened. He knew that feeling. He had lived it. But he also knew that just because someone felt alone didn't mean they had to stay that way. You're not alone, he said firmly. You got Buddy, and you got me. Sarah blinked, startled. Why would you help me? Mike exhaled, looking at her with an intensity that left no room for doubt. Because your son was a hero, and because Buddy never gave up on him. The least I can do is make sure you both get the chance you deserve. Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. For the first time in a long time, hope flickered in her eyes. She looked down at Buddy, her fingers tightening in his fur. Okay, she whispered. I'll try. Buddy let out a soft sigh, curling up beside her, finally at peace. And for the first time in months, so was she. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that came after a storm. Not just the one outside, but the one inside a person's heart. Sarah sat on the couch, Buddy curled up beside her, his golden fur finally dry, his breathing steady. He was home. He was safe. And for the first time in weeks, so was she. Mike Tyson sat across from them, watching carefully. He had seen knockouts, seen men crumble under the weight of exhaustion. But this was different. This was a woman who had been fighting a silent battle for too long, and a dog who had nearly given up, but never let go. Sarah's fingers ran absent-mindedly through Buddy's fur as she stared at the picture frame on the table. It was old, a little dusty, but the image inside was clear. Noah, young, strong, full of life, smiling, holding a tiny Buddy in his arms. She swallowed hard. I used to think losing him was the worst thing that could ever happen to me, she said softly. But after the funeral, when everything was gone, I realized what was worse. Mike leaned forward slightly, listening. The world kept moving, she whispered. People went back to their lives. But me? I was stuck. Her voice broke. I didn't just lose Noah. I lost myself. Buddy shifted beside her, pressing his head into her lap. Mike nodded. He understood that feeling. The moment when grief wraps itself around you so tightly, you forget how to breathe. But you're here, he said. His voice was quiet but strong. And so is he. Sarah looked down at Buddy, her fingers tightening slightly. Mike continued. You didn't just get him back. He got you back too. A tear slipped down her cheek. But this time, it wasn't just grief. It was something else. Something lighter. Hope. She let out a shaky breath, looking back at the picture of Noah. He would have wanted this, wouldn't he? Mike gave a slow nod. Yeah, he would. Sarah exhaled, then finally smiled. It was small, hesitant, but real. Buddy sighed contentedly, curling up closer to her. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't waiting at a grave. He wasn't lost. He was home. Mike stood, grabbing his jacket. I'll check in on you both, he said, heading for the door. Sarah looked up at him. Mike? He paused, turning back. Her eyes were still red, her voice still raw, but her next words were filled with something she hadn't felt in a long time. Thank you, Mike gave her a small nod. Anytime. Then, with one last glance at Buddy, at the dog who had never stopped believing, he stepped out into the night, knowing that for the first time in a long time, everything was exactly where it was supposed to be.